Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Fluently Forward. Today on the podcast, we are wrapping all of my favorite topics into one, and we are going to be talking about sirens, but we're going to be looking at the angle of it from myth, lore, ancient legend. Then we're going to look at the conspiracy side of it and how this idea of sirens and enchanting female like creatures that lure you to your death and kill you pop up repackaged into a lot of modern day conspiracy theories, whether it's the incel community with their black pills and their red pills, or this idea that microplastics and society at large is turning men into women and everything's being feminized. We're going to take a look at it through the siren angle. And then lastly, we're going to talk about different siren like creatures all throughout history and Hollywood, whether it's Cleopatra or Helen of Troy or Angelina Jolie and the more modern day sirens or these celebrities and famous women where you go, oh my God, there's something about their beauty or their voice or how they act that just, I'm like a moth to a flame. I can't get enough of them. It's just such a fun concept. And I wanted to do this on the public one because over on Patreon a couple days ago, we did the same concept, but we talked about vampires with it. And let me tell you, there's a lot of historical lore about vampires and the conspiracy of adrenochrome and this idea of the elites sucking blood from other people and how a lot of that comes from vampire lore, basically back in the day. And then we talked about the modern day vampire, which is, to me, an energy drainer or a narcissist and how they pop up and how to defend yourself against them. But for today's episode, I was really excited to pick up the idea of sirens because maybe it's just me. For someone who, barely remembers to put earrings on every day, I am fascinated with beauty. I love being around it. I love looking at it from like an architectural standpoint. When I make my Sims, they're always 11 out of 10 attractive. There's just something about pretty things, and humans really like pretty things. There's like this whole deep dive that I could go on where basically back in the day when we were building different pieces of architecture, and you can even see this when you walk through like older towns or especially over in Europe, lampposts aren't just a solid, out as they are here in the States in most places, a like crappy little metal pole with a lamp on it. It was these beautiful ornate structures with like these curly cues and everything was carved perfectly, or the benches with like the beautiful ornate ironwork and the wood and the curve. And now you just see a bench and it's just like a lump of concrete. And there's all of these cool theories that I really believe in, that in this capitalistic, we need to be productive society, we've decided we need to make everything like super chic. And sometimes I like it. Sometimes you want to go to IKEA. It's like, just give me a desk for $100. But humans really love things that are beautiful. And it's not just humans. You look at animals too. And it's wild how in the animal kingdom, it's always, the lion, the male lion with his big furry mane, or the male peacock with all of his beautiful feathers. We love things that are beautiful and we're entranced by it. And you see that none other than directly the myth of the siren. The lure of beauty, how it's super magnetizing, how it compels you. The power of Christ compels you. I mean, even with Christ himself, not to take it there, but they kind of sexed him up, didn't they? Like he's shirtless in a lot of these things. I'm only saying because as a hormonal teenager in CCD and Bible study, I was like, wait a minute, like that 5 o'clock shadow on Jesus, like looks really good. And then you look into it and you find that's not what he looked like. He looked totally different. But maybe it's because sexy people have always compelled us. We have been so drawn to the idea of beauty since the beginning of time. And I think it's funny how we talk about some psychological concepts like the halo effect, where someone's really beautiful. So you naturally, subconsciously subscribe all of these positive characteristics to them before you even witness or experience it in that person. You're like, well, surely they must be polite because they're so beautiful. But then we also have the darker cousin of the halo effect. And I feel like sometimes we see this with Angelina Jolie or Madison Beer or Megan Fox, a woman who's so beautiful that all of these negative characteristics are attributed to her because she's just that jaw-droppingly gorgeous. So without further ado, let's start with our first section here and talk about the history and lore, sirens all throughout history. So, sirens are one of these beautiful figures, and they come through in mythological history. They were in ancient Greek mythology, and sirens, even though today, when you picture them, you kind of imagine like a beautiful mermaid coming up to your ship and crooning these beautiful songs to you, perhaps because Pirates of the Caribbean 3, I think, had like this scene. If you know what it is, you know what it is. I would like rewind and be like, wow, something about the sirens in the water. I'm so drawn to them. And that's kind of what it's turned into in modern day. But the original siren started in ancient Greek mythology, and it was a half woman, half bird. It's always the face of a human and then the body of something else. And it kind of looked like a harpy type of creature. And these sirens would be these woman bird creatures that would live on rocky islands, kind of like where seagulls would live. And they would sing a song and it would lure sailors to their doom because the songs and what was in them, which we're going to talk about later, were so irresistibly beautiful. Then over time, we have this concept of the original siren change up a little bit, and it turns more into like a half woman, half mermaid situation. I think that's because the original harpies lived kind of in a seagull like area. They were that type of bird. So it only took a little bit of a push to turn them into a mermaid of types. But what's also interesting is that apparently in Greek, the word for fin, as in a fish fin, and then the word for wing, as in like a bird wing, sound kind of similar. They both start with like a, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, like pateron and then pertegio. So maybe that's also why it happened. We first hear about sirens in Homer's Odyssey, and in this epic of the Odyssey, he talks about how Odysseus encountered sirens on his voyage home for Troy. They were sailing, they were coming back from Troy, and they knew that they were going to run into the sirens, but Odysseus was like, I really want to hear what they're saying. So he made all of the crew members on the ship plug their ears with beeswax so that way they wouldn't be able to hear the beautiful, dangerous call of the siren. And he said, tie me to the mast, but don't put anything in my ears because I want to hear what they're saying. But I want to make sure that I'm so constrained that I can't get out of my bonds and kill myself, but I have to know what the sirens are saying. And apparently that was because this lore of the siren said not only do they just sing a really good song, but their voices also promise knowledge, forbidden knowledge. And that's one of the things that would lure the sailors into their death. So it's kind of a double whammy. Not only is it this beautiful creature and you're being tempted and compelled, but it's also the power of forbidden knowledge and what you specifically might want to know. And I think that's a really cool anytime myths or I don't know, supernatural abilities can be changed on a person to person basis. Like I think that Harry Potter does this so well, the way that you have your own sorting hat that puts you into your own house based on who you are and your personality. And then you have a Patronus and it's a different animal based on you personally. There's a Bogart that comes out of the closet and it turns into your own personal fear, or there's a mirror of whatever it's called, like the mirror of Ursid or reflection. It like shows you what you want and it changes based on who looks into it, which is just so it scratches that human itch, really everything about Harry Potter, like the idea that you wake up and you're naturally born special because of something that happened to you and you didn't have to work for it or try for it, but you just are special. You happen to be magical. And then this idea that every single house that you're in or fear that you face or spell that you cast, it's so hyper individualized. I don't know if J.K. Rowling did this on purpose. I would imagine no, because then it caught the Marvel effect of things. But the individual, like, personality quiz aspect of everything, I think, what a moneymaker if I had to put together a series. So anyway, continuing on with the lore of the siren, then we have sirens in later for like Greek historical context. They start to become a little bit more associated with death and the afterlife. At certain funerals or on monuments, you'll see sirens carved into it because they started to become a symbol of if you see a siren, you're about to meet your maker. So they're kind of that bridge between the living and the dead. Then, when we move into the Roman time periods of history, this is when the image evolves a little bit, and we get more of this idea of the siren as the mermaid. And they're a little bit more feminine, a little bit more beautiful. And this kind of represents how the times in history are changing as well. People are starting to go, wait a minute, women are kind of dangerous. There are fears of female sexuality and female emotional manipulation. And you see that change in the concept of the siren, and it becomes much more womanly, much more enchanting. And it's less so about this song that they sing, but also kind of how they look and how they're presenting themselves. Then we move on to the Middle Ages, and this is when sirens get fully absorbed by Christian folklore, and they start to represent temptation and sin. This is also when we start to get sirens being depicted in this era holding different accessories, which I find really interesting. So you start to see sirens as holding these combs and mirrors, and their tails, their fish tails, start to become super like jeweled colors, and they shimmer and they look amazing. Even in today, when you see a mermaid or this depiction of a siren, they're never, it's not Ross dress for less. Like they're never wearing anything kind of plain. They're usually doing things that represent vanity. They're combing their hair while they look in a mirror, or they're finding a pearl necklace and putting it on them, or they're doing like a try on haul. This must be the reason why I am so obsessed with cartoon mermaids, because it looks like they're just queening out all the time. But it's not an accident that they started to get depicted with all of these, I don't know what to call it other than accessories, but this starts to happen because in the medieval age, not only are you saying this is womanly, this is temptation, this is sin, but they're also saying it's the temptation of possessions and owning things and caring about vanity and all of that. Nay, 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 it's so bad as well. Then in the Renaissance, the myth and the lore of the siren gets a little bit of a revival, and it starts to represent a little bit more of this tension in between art, beauty, and danger. So you start to see painters like John William, Waterhouse, and writers like Shakespeare use sirens as metaphors for desire, artistry, and the seductive power of language. This is where we get the phrase to be bewitched by a siren song. And being bewitched by a siren song basically means that you're giving into something and it's irresistibly tempting to you, but you know it's going to cause something bad down the line. It's bad for you, but oh my God, do you want it? And something about just that feeling in general, like, of course, it would find its way into the art world. It's such a compelling idea. Every time Olivia Rodrigo sings about obsession, I'm like, yes, like to be bewitched by the siren song. I'm so obsessed with your ex. I know she's been asleep on my side of the bed. I get bewitched by siren songs all the time. Every time I open up TikTok, every time I see Nerds Gummy Clusters when I'm checking out at the pharmacy. Ooh, I am bewitched by the siren song. It's a nicer way to say, like, I have a phone addiction. I'm bewitched by the siren song. Anyway, and now you go all the way up to modern day folklore and today, and sirens kind of represent something a little bit different. They still have the same notions from the past, but they are after men specifically, like I'm going after male sailors. And they also are a little bit more vengeful. They're a little bit more protective of the ocean. And I feel like it's interesting that the lore changes with that because we are in a time today where women have had the most power all throughout history. There's such a clash between the genders always. We're going to get into that more when we move on to the next section. And then also, we've never polluted the oceans more than we have in history. So, isn't it interesting that this concept of a siren or a womanly mermaid in the ocean is now angry at men and trying to kill them, and then also pissed off at people for polluting the ocean? I feel like it just kind of makes sense with everything that we're going through. And I feel like this archetype of the siren sticks around and evolves so much because it's just so tempting. Like, we're never going to get bored with the idea of something being beautiful and dangerous and bad for us, but oh my God, we still want it. And it represents a lot of different things. I feel like a siren can represent any type of addiction that you have, it can represent codependency or even getting into a relationship, that beautiful, entrancing honeymoon period, or maybe you're being love bombed by someone and then you meet the eventual horrible demise and end of it. Now, are sirens real? I don't know. I don't think so. When it comes to certain myths and legends, like I could make a case for dragons back in the day having been real. I feel like that's a really fun one. Bigfoot, I don't know. You get me drunk enough, I could talk about how Bigfoot is real. Aliens, 100%. I'm stone cold sober right now. Aliens are real. But when it comes to sirens, I don't know exactly. And here's why: it's just a little too convenient that men would like crash their ships or go off course and then be like, oh my God, it's so crazy. There was this like half woman bird thing that made us go off course. And like, that's why Johnny didn't come back with us. And then even when they update the, I don't know, like the visual imagery of the siren and it starts to become half woman, half fish, and it's a mermaid-like creature, why are they always so good looking? That wouldn't make sense. Have you seen a fish? Have you seen really anything underwater? Like, no shade. I don't know why. It's not like they're listening to this podcast. Those things are disgusting. Have you seen an anglerfish? If there were to be some sort of half human, half fish creature, it would not, the boobs wouldn't be perky. Like, what are we doing? There would be gills, there would be, like, webbed fingers and toes. You have to live in the water. There would probably be barnacles on them. They're never drawn that way, so it's just like, let's keep it a little bit real. I'm pretty sure that they're not around, and I would imagine that this myth comes from a few different things wrapped up into one. One is the fear of the ocean. We still don't know everything that's down there, which is why I'm not saying 100% that sirens aren't real. 2, the fear of women. 3, the fear of women's voices, and then 4, not having, like, GPS. And, like, you could crash your ship into something and be like, I don't wanna say that it was me, so, like, let me come up with something." Now, when we look at modern day conspiracy theories, and I had to put my thinking cap on, I'm like, okay, the myth of the siren, we have a woman, a dangerously beautiful woman with her voice, and you're being lured over to her, and then boom, you're killed. And it's so dangerous to listen to her and to follow her voice and to, I don't know, go to her island or her underwater. It depends on which era of the siren you're talking about. There are 2 modern day conspiracy theories that I think is just the siren, but it's repackaged. And the first one is this conspiracy theory that people talk about with such fear about how men and everyone are getting feminized and the men are becoming women and the women are becoming men. But really, the big fear is that men are becoming women. And some people look at this in the conspiracy angle of microplastics, which I don't know much about microplastics. But I know that they are something to be scared about. I don't like anything that I see about the amount of plastic we have in our bodies. So some people say that it's microplastics, some people say that it's hormones, some people say that men are watching too much porn and it's turning them womanly, or all the way even on TikTok when it doesn't seem insidious, but talking about how men want princess treatment nowadays and they want to drive passenger princess and all of these different ideas of like a big fear of men becoming womanly and how terrifying that is. And it's interesting because, of course, some people say men are becoming women and women are becoming men, but there's not as much fear as the concept or the conspiracy, basically, of women becoming men. But there's so much fear around this basically made up hypothetical reality in which men are becoming more like women. You even see this in the fact that if a woman is a doctor, it's like, oh my God, amazing, you're a doctor. If a man is a nurse, you're going to make so much fun of it. Even recently, kind of recently in pop culture with the Meet the Fockers, it's just going to be made fun of. It's just something with roots of misogyny and even transphobia in it. And it's freaking people out, similar to the siren. But back in the old stories, it would be like, put beeswax in your ear and tie yourself to the mast to avoid the siren song. And now it's like, don't use plastics and then also do No Nut November. And that's how you can avoid the siren song before you turn into a woman. And you see the notion of this idea of being lured by the siren song in a lot of modern day issues that are going on. Like, for example, girls who are on OnlyFans. Anytime they're talked about by people in the news, certain news channels is just what I'll say. They always talk about it like these whorish, like bewitching women on OnlyFans who are basically robbing men of their money. And oh my God, they're like entrancing all of these people. They do it with such a negative taste in their mouth, and they never talk once about the fact that that entire industry exists, is supported by, and thrives because of men who are actively taking out their credit card, actively putting the information in, and then actively jerking off to them as well. But instead, it's always talked about like these entrancing OnlyFans models who are able to do this because they're taking advantage of men. Very siren song, just repackaged today. And all of this comes to a head when you start to enter the incel world and Nick Fuentes and his crew, and whether it's the red pill ideology or the black pill ideology, there's either the red pill or the black pill. There's different pills that you're taking in the incel community world. And a lot of their ideology centers around this idea that the world we live in today is run by women. Women are on top. Men don't stand a chance. You have to swallow either the red or the black pill. It varies from community to community, and understand that this is the world that we live in and how unfair it is for men because women, it's like so hard for the words to even come out of my mouth, but women get all of the privileges in society and it's so not fair. They tell stories, which once again, I just like can't help but think of the siren and all of these different rhetoric pieces that they spout out, but they say that women run the dating market, that they control men through sex, that they're gold diggers, that they use attention like a currency. And what do they point to as examples of this? A cute girl lip syncing to something on TikTok with a million views. Oh my God, it's so not fair. She's so pretty and she didn't have to do anything. And now she's getting all of this. And it's like, it's a pretty girl on TikTok. Like, it doesn't represent the state of the world. Or some girl on OnlyFans who's making like $4 million a year. They're not going to look at the fact that that girl has braces on in her OnlyFans, or how many men have put in their credit card information and are jerking off to her. But instead, they're like, this is such a sign that women control everything. And what's really interesting about these communities, and don't worry, I'm going to talk about it on the female side as well, but one of the famous communities for this on Reddit is the subreddit MGTOW, I think, which is men going their own way. And it's a bunch of men who have taken the red or black pill. I really need to find the difference. I think black pill is more nihilistic. Red pill is like life is tough, and black pill is like life is tough. So, like, let's kill ourselves. Anyway, men going their own way is a group full of men who have taken this pill and they're basically like, we need to cut women off. It's like the 4B movement, but for men. But of course, ironically, if you go on that subreddit, ooh, I'm feeling nasty. Should I do it right now and see what the top posts of the week or the month are? Even though they're going their own way, what they're consistently always talking about and obsessing over with like veins, like so angry, is women obsessing about the problem, but you can't stop talking about it. And it's kind of giving off the same energy as men blaming sirens for why their ship crashed. Oh my God, I'm so lonely. There's an epidemic going on, and it's all women's fault, isn't it? They need to be the one to fix it. It's their fault. Oh, wait, I'm trying to look it up. I think the subreddit got banned. Okay, well, you know what? That shows you my age. When I was growing up, men going their own way was definitely a thing, but I think that it's been banned now. Anyway, so that's what I see as the modern version of the siren call. Instead of it being these birdfish women who are luring sailors to their death, it's an OnlyFans girl who's luring a man out of all of his money. Or it's a beautiful girl on Instagram or TikTok, and she's getting all of the social media clout and capital, and it's so not fair. And the craziest part of all of this to me, and when you look at it from a perspective of, oh God, there's this book. Let me look up the name of it. It's all about how to make ideas contagious and have something catch on. No, I, I should have been able to come up with this on my own. It's called Contagious: Why Things Catch On by Jonah Berger. And I read this book a couple years ago, and it made me think about just how entrancing conspiracies and blind items are, because it gives you a little taste of something. And it's like, ooh, wait a minute. One of those things was true. Let me go deeper down into this rabbit hole. Anytime somebody tells you a fact and it feels like a secret and parts of it are true, and it makes you feel like you uncovered some sort of truth and now you want to tell someone else about it. That's the basis of the ideas that are the most contagious and spread the fastest like wildfire. And you see that so much in the incel community, because parts of this are true. When I say parts, I mean like 5%. Like, for example, we do live in a society where if I dress up nicely and somebody happens to be chivalrous, which like it's not everybody, okay, but just stick with me for this. If I need someone to help me put my luggage up in the carry-on the plane, usually there would be a guy who would do it. If I want to go into a club and the line is long, I will get in before a man will. These are like few, like once again, few moments I am cherry picking, and like do not even comment like, blah, blah, blah. I know. Okay. These are like the 3 points that I will concede. Nearly everything else in life is going to be harder, especially from a safety perspective as a woman. But these men in these communities look at the notion of like a woman having a drink bought for her, which, by the way, somebody's only buying a drink for that woman so that way they can penetrate her later. But they'll look at that moment and be like, see, I never get that. Or like men only get flowers at their funeral, etc. So with those few reference points, they talk about this like hard truth that they've uncovered, and they make it sound so metal. Swallow the red pill, swallow the black pill. I'm surprised there's not like a onyx night pill, the absolute darkest one, fucking swallow it. And they're like, there's this hard truth, and here's what's happening, and here's our community. And they present it as like this archaeological societal dig that they went on, and they found this hidden truth. And you look at it and you're just like, bro, you did not do anything new. This has been going on for 3,000 years. all the way in the time of Homer's Odyssey with the Sirens. You're just repackaging an old shitty concept that's been around since the beginning of history itself. You didn't uncover anything. But these theories, similar in the same way that these mythological creatures were created, they all derive from fear. And for men, they really prey on this fear that, like, what if a woman enters your world and she sucks you dry and she takes everything out of you and she's a gold digger and you're left heartless with your heart ripped out and you have nothing left to your name. And that's what they do with these certain women like Hailey Bieber or Meghan Markle, or this idea of like this succubus, another myth, right? Basically existing. And then over on the female side, they do the same thing. And you have this with the female dating strategy groups and a lot of all of this like bullshit dating advice on TikTok where they basically pray to a woman's fear center. And they're like, okay, but what if a man only wants to use you for sex and then he absolutely decimates you emotionally and screws you over and then you're left emotionally crippled for years for what he did for you. So you need to get really, really good at vetting someone straight up. And that's what they focus on culture war wise on the other side for women. And that's why you start to have these women who are like, I need to date a man who makes more than six figures. And he needs to be over 6 feet tall. So that way I'm not like made fun of by my friends. And he needs to have a huge dick because I don't want to be disappointed there. And he needs to send an Uber for the first date. So then that way I know that he's serious. And both men and women are being fed this content in their algorithms that both prey on their fears. And then what happens is that you have a man and a woman. I don't know why I'm doing the scissoring motion here on YouTube, but they end up meeting each other on a dating app and they're both have all of this like stuff in their brain that the internet has told them personalized to their gender. And it just goes wrong from the jump because the woman is like, well, if he's not going to take me to dinner and send an Uber on the first date, he might not be serious. I'm fearful. And then the man goes, she wants dinner and an Uber for the first date and we haven't even met. She's going to bleed me dry of all my money. Fear based. And then before you know it, we're both scared of each other. Everybody's paranoid. Everyone's suspicious. And the Russian bots or whoever the fuck is feeding all of this stuff in the algorithm is going, hell yeah, I did it once again. It's really honestly like I kind of have to tip my hat to whoever is like fucking with us so heavily on these algorithms because they have done such a good job. Like men and women hate each other. Even the generations, we were able to get like millennials versus Gen Z, and now it's everyone versus Gen Alpha. Like, ugh, Gen Alpha. Of course, you have every religion, suspicious of the other, every race suspicious of the other. I would say every class, but like not really. Like that's the one thing they're able to get us to do, not talk about class. But you know what I'm even seeing lately too? I'm even starting to see it in neurodivergent communities. They're like, neurotypicals do it this way and neurodivergent people do it that way. And it's like, yes, there are differences between us. We don't need to hate each other. We don't, but they're going to make it that way, aren't they? So, anyway, all of this to say, conspiracies and people disliking each other, it goes back to the same original creation of all of these myths and these mythological creatures. We're scared of something and it manifests in a certain way. And since the beginning of time, there have been fears around women. There have been fears around women. Their beauty, it's dangerous. Their voice, it's dangerous. How attracted I am to them, it's dangerous. And you see this with sirens, but then you also see this with succubus or succubi. I don't know what the plural is. Even the idea of witches being burned at the stake, this idea that there's some sort of power and femininity and I'm drawn to it and we need to crush it out because what if it's dangerous and what if it leads to my demise, basically. So there's different names and shapes for this fear, whether it's the red pill or the black pill or a man wants princess treatment and he's wearing nail polish. So now that means that he's a gay woman and it like scares me. Or like, don't drink soy milk because you're going to turn into a woman. You see it pop up in so many different ways nowadays, but it all just goes back to the same original fear that we've had since the beginning of time. So let's take a look at different siren-like women all throughout history and Hollywood and who has had the most dangerous, compelling beauty, so much so that we still remember these names thousands of years later. The first ones that I thought of, and then I'm going to add some more, but when I was putting this episode together, the first four that came to me, I'll be curious if we're thinking of the same women. I thought of Cleopatra, Helen of Troy, Marilyn Monroe, and Angelina Jolie. So we'll start with Cleopatra. Oh, back in the day, she is the prototype for the siren, for the mythical, beautiful woman, the seductress. She was beautiful, we know this, but she was also brilliant and very politically savvy. She spoke multiple languages, which I think makes a good case for her being a siren. She could sing the call of the siren in a variety of different languages. She studied philosophy and science, and she led Egypt through brutal Roman politics. But history has kind of flattened her into a little bit of a seductress and also somebody with a really good winged eye, right? She always has the good winged eye. She was the woman who brought down Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and her intelligence and charisma, perhaps her siren song, terrified men. So over the years, she kind of turned into this caricature of this beautiful seductress rather than a political strategist. So she was kind of punished for her magnetism. Helen of Troy, while she's not like a real person, it's basically a myth. I wanted to include it because I just think that it fits so well into the mythology of the siren. And I do remember too in college, I was dating this guy and his roommate. I don't know if it was like on a roommate quiz or we were out at trivia, but there maybe it was on he was on a dating show or something, and the question was, "Who would you most like to have dinner with, real or fictional, living or dead?" And I think he said, quote, "Helen of Troy, just to see what all of the fuss was about." And ever since he said that, I was like, "Yeah, I would want that too." Helen of Troy, we know her story. She had the face that launched, I believe it was 1,000 ships. And I find it interesting that she's this beautiful woman who causes, she does not cause it, okay, but they say that she started the war, so she was responsible for it. Um, the war happened with ships, right? It's kind of giving siren, whether it's the bird woman who's luring people in or whether it's the fish woman who's crashing all of the different ships. This idea of a beautiful woman who's responsible for a lot of people dying and ships being involved. I just feel like she kind of represents, not that she's a real human, but she kind of represents the womanly human version of the siren myth. Marilyn Monroe, God, Marilyn Monroe, I wanna do an episode sometime in the future about the conspiracy of glamour magic and Marilyn Monroe because she was so beautiful, she was so adored, and honestly, there's a lot of great conspiracy stuff. You know what? Let me put it down. We should do a Marilyn Monroe episode. Anyway, but there's this iconic story that Marilyn Monroe could just be walking down the street out in public, and if she wasn't doing her thing, she would just look like a normal person. But then she would always say to people, "Do you want me to do it? Like, do you want me to become Marilyn?" And then she would kind of turn it on within herself. And immediately people would be drawn in by her aura and captivated by her. And like, holy shit, like this beautiful woman. But this entrancing idea that she could turn it off or on depending on, I don't know, just this tantalizing idea, I guess, because beauty and charisma seem to be the two things that you can't super duper work on. You kind of either are born with it or you're not. Now, in the age of 2025, it does not matter if you're born with beauty. You seem to be able to buy it. But a charisma or an it factor kind of seems like you have it or you don't, which is why the notion of like Serena van der Woodsen was so captivating, this it girl. And I loved when I did an episode, I don't know if it was about Wicked or whatever. I I think it might have been about Mean Girls. I don't know. I always talk about the difference of the mean girl, or sorry, the it girl and the popular girl, and just how different that is. So, for example, Glinda in Wicked, she is the popular girl, but Elphaba is the it girl. In Gossip Girl, Blair is popular, but Serena is it. In Mean Girls, Katie Heron is it, but Regina George is popular. And the popular girl always has rules and a formula for how to be popular. And you see this when Glinda is singing the song Popular. And she's like, here's exactly how you do it. Okay. It is a strategy. And you do steps 1 through 7. Or in Mean Girls, you have to wear pink on Wednesdays. And we have all of these rules. Are they not me being like, wait a minute, is it giving neurodivergent? Anyway. Or in Gossip Girl, Blair Waldorf, we sit at the steps and I have my crew and they report to me in this hierarchy. And it's like, okay, I got popular, but I did it by work and grinding. And you can basically put in effort to become popular. And then you have the it girl, the Elphaba, the Serena, the Katie Heron. And those are the girls who are like, I'm not even trying, but everyone just seems to be obsessed with me. And like, I'm not even putting effort into my hair or what I'm doing, but I just kind of naturally have this it thing. And that's why you see such a struggle between the popular girl and the it girl, because the popular girl is like, God damn it, everyone loves you and you didn't work hard for it like you were supposed to. And we see this pop up in pop culture today with the Nepo babies and why everybody like fucking hates Kendall Jenner because she just happened to model, even though it's mostly because of her name, versus someone like Bella Hadid, who is a Nepo baby, but man, she grinds for it. She would be the popular girl. Anyway, and when it comes to beauty, I noticed that we start to have a lot of moral superiority and purity tests around beauty as well. Because now, if celebrities get work done, even if it looks good or if it doesn't look good, they really start to get, I don't know, like spanked online for doing it. Oh my God, she had such a great face and she ruined her face. And I don't think it's so much so about, oh my God, you got bad work done, your lip filler looks wonky. I think it's more so people being upset that someone's trying to cheat the system when really they should just be accepting what they have naturally, because we're all kind of bitter about what we have naturally. So, anyway, all of this to say, I think that's one of the things that really entrances people about Marilyn Monroe and this idea that she could turn on her it factor suddenly, because it factor throughout the years has always seemed like something where you're either born with it or you're not. And as many people sing about and talk about, you can try, but sometimes you just don't have the natural flavor. So, this idea that Marilyn Monroe could just, turn it on and suddenly everybody clamors to her and they're like, who is that woman on the street? It's maybe a fantasy, who knows if it's real, but it's a really compelling idea, just like the compelling Siren song. So I think she represents a modern day siren, this idea that it's this beautiful woman, but then the minute she turns it on and starts siren songing you, everybody is drawn to her and you can't help but be compelled and captivated by her. And she was so dangerous that she had to be killed by the CIA. Who said that? I'll save it for the Marilyn Monroe episode. Angelina Jolie is also someone that I came up with because I just think ever since the early 2000s, she has had this idea of the femme fatale, this beautiful, dangerous woman, vixen type of energy that not everybody has. And maybe it's because she talks about how she would drink blood or wear it around her neck or the leather or the mysterious eyes or every single thing about Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I mean, goddamn, what a movie. But even when we saw the Brad, Angelina, Jennifer love triangle infidelity, would you call it a love triangle? Now that I'm thinking about it and I'm not living in the early 2000s, I'm like, it actually wasn't a love triangle, was it? Well, I guess it was. I don't know. Anyway, with that whole mess, the way that it was spoken about, and yes, it's because it was in the early 2000s, but they really spoke about Angelina Jolie like, not to be crass, the story wasn't Brad stuck his penis in Angelina. It was like Angelina Jolie's captivative, slithering, seductress snake of a vagina entranced and caught him in a trap, and he couldn't help it. I mean, that was just the way that they fucking wrote about things in the early 2000s. But how much does that sound like the siren call? Brad Pitt did not crash his ship, okay? A siren called to him and then he was drawn towards it and then the ship happened to crash, but it was really just because like some woman was singing at him and it wasn't his fault. That was like the story of Brad, Angelina, and Jennifer. Now, with all of that said, there's something about Angelina Jolie where every time I see her, I never watch a TikTok of her once. I watched it about 5 times. There's something about Angelina Jolie that is just so entrancing. One of my favorite things to do is to read quotes of people who talk about Angelina Jolie, like they're describing her. It's not Angelina Jolie quotes herself, okay? I pulled up a few of them because I just love reading them so much. In a 2005 article, the director James Mangold was speaking about Angelina Jolie and he said, quote, her power is volcanic. It's huge. It's electric. Vanity Fair in 2008 said about her when they were interviewing her, quote, she went through the lobby the way a shark goes through the ocean, quickly and smoothly. You detect her presence not by her face, but by how people around her react, the flurry in the water. We sat, people circled around her as debris orbits a planet. This is called gravity. Ah. From Vogue in 2024, they said Angelina Jolie, quote, epitomizes classic Hollywood grace, but with an underlying pathos that evokes old world elegance. A quote from Kathy Newman that says Angelina Jolie is a woman who seems to attract superlatives. The most beautiful woman in the world, the most famous woman in the world. You name it, someone's Googled it. And this last quote was unfortunately said by Johnny Depp, but it is a very pretty quote. He said, quote, "She's kind of a walking poem. She's this perfect beauty, but at the same time, very deep, very smart." It seems like every single person who is around Anja, not me feeding into the same horrible logic of the early 2000s. No, Brad Pitt was the one who cheated, okay? But there really seems to be something about Angelina Jolie where, not to quote the emperor from Mulan, but they don't make a girl like that every dynasty. Just the way that people truly seem to be, like, magnetized by her. I'm feeling things right now, and I haven't even looked at a picture of her or ever met her in my life. I'm just thinking about the concept of her. It's a bewitching siren song. Next. Okay. Other examples in history that aren't ones that I came up with, but I was looking around for it. We talked about her in a public episode a couple months ago. If you just type in Fluently Forward Honeypot Spies and Jeffrey Epstein, that was the episode we talked about when we talked about the history of honeypot spies. And back in World War I, Mata Hari, she was a Dutch exotic dancer and a courtesan, we'll say, who was accused of being a spy, a honeypot spy, and she ended up being executed by firing squad, even though, looking back on it now, a lot of historians say that the evidence was weak and they more so wanted to kill her just to send a message that if anyone else was looking to be a spy, you also will get shot, basically. But I'm sorry, I just knocked the table. But it's a classic siren archetype, this beautiful woman who's so dangerous, and you might give in to her and spill all of your secrets and topple the structure because you gave in to this woman. It's a siren archetype. Anne Boleyn, we know the story of her, King Henry the Seventh's wife, I believe. And she was kind of accused of similar things in a Meghan Markle, Hailey Bieber type way. They were like, she bewitched the king and she compelled him to break away from the Catholic Church. She, similar to Cleopatra, was charismatic, politically savvy, and ambitious. But all of this was later reframed as being manipulative. When she eventually fell out of favor and ended up being executed for adultery and kind of like low-key witchcraft, it was this idea that her beauty was so dangerous and she was so compelling and magnetizing that she like changed the king's mind, and someone with that much power is super dangerous, so you have to get rid of them. Megan Fox, I mean, what a classic siren symbol. I would say Madison Beer, but I feel like Madison Beer isn't like big enough a la movie screens to like really be a siren symbol. But Megan Fox, I mean, we all remember in Transformers when she bent over the car. She was the sex symbol of the early 2000s. And she was so sexy that she basically immediately got demonized. She's too sensual, too sexual, too cocky, too sexy, all of these things. I was talking with a friend of mine, I forget who the other day, and she was like, "Yeah, when I was younger, I like hated Megan Fox. Like I thought that she was such a bitch, and now I look back on it and I'm like, "Oh my god, I didn't know anything about this woman. I was just told to dislike her." So, too sexy, have to hate it. I fear it. It's a siren song. There are also a few, let's see, I have one, two, three, four. These aren't to me like siren archetypes to a T, but I feel like they fall under like a special, I don't know, special circumstance category. You'll understand it when I start talking about it. Number one, Lana Del Rey. I don't think that she's the classic siren archetype because it's not like she's singing songs and luring men to their death, but instead it's like she sings songs about men and then she drowns herself on her own. Okay. So it's like a siren who kind of got their wires crossed because I feel like Lana Del Rey, the songs that she sings, and maybe this is more so on like her earlier albums, it's so beautiful. It's so enchanting. She's such a I don't know, she kind of gives me the siren archetype with, like, the long hair and dressing herself in jewels and velvet and silk, like, she works so much of that imagery into her songs, but instead of having the man become entranced in killing themselves or driving their ships to the bottom of the ocean, instead, Lana Del Rey is like, "Oh my god, so I'll kill myself to be with you. Oh my god, you left me, so now I'm gonna, like, go jump off of a cliff." So I would imagine it as like a siren, but like, the siren got bonked on the head and is like doing the siren song. a little bit incorrectly and just doing it right back into their ears. Taylor Swift, I make a case for her being a siren, not because I think she's entrancing men and driving them to her death, but I think she's doing it to her fans. I think she is bewitching people. I think she's a witch, and I think we need to set some things on fire. Taylor Swift would be in that category. So would Nicki Minaj. So would the members of BTS. I know that they're men, but they're sirens because there's some sort of entrancing happening with these parasocial stans who like ride so hard for certain musicians that it's giving religious iconography. It's giving cult. It's giving worship, stan worship. So I think those three people, they're sirens somehow. I just can't put my finger on it. So that's why it's in a special category. Britney Spears. This is a siren who got caged. She is a beautiful woman singing a song. Everyone's so attracted to her. But what if instead of the sailor crashing his ship, he had beeswax in his ear and he snatched up the siren and put her in a cage? To me, that would be Britney Spears. And then the last one is Megan the Stallion. And to me, this would be a siren and she's singing on the rock, but the ship comes towards her and she's like, I'm not singing for the ship to, I want to sing and I want you to watch. I don't care about you crashing your ship. I'm just here to sing. Maybe she's just singing. I'm picturing the harpies for all of this too. Maybe she's singing, but like her back is facing the ship and she's like, I really don't even care. She's putting on a show for the orcas, perhaps. Yeah. I don't know. Everyone's like, this episode's making no sense at the end. I don't know. I just wanted some special considerations in there, but I would imagine like Angelina Jolie, Marilyn Monroe, those are kind of giving the idea of the siren to me. So let me know what you think about all of this. Do you see any modern day conspiracy theories where you're like, wait a minute, I think that's kind of a repackaged siren piece of lore that's coming out? And who else do you think would be a good modern day siren? I didn't pick any men just because I feel like to be a siren, so much of the siren myth and legend is wrapped up in being a woman and the woman speaking and singing and it being a woman's voice. So I feel like it's kind of, I don't know. I just had to pick women for that one. And then also, if you want to check out the episode we did all about vampires on Patreon, that was a really fun one talking about all of the different, I split up the different vampires, AKA narcissists throughout history into like political leaders, technology leaders, cult leaders, and then always, of course, people in Hollywood. So if you want to check that out and any more episodes, head on over to patreon.com/fluentlyforward. And in the meantime, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and spending time with me for this episode. I will see you guys soon for another episode of Fluently Forward. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.